Like Michelle said, my name is Snider. I'm the Director of Education for GrainBridge, and we offer a range of educational resources for teachers at no cost, primarily covering topics in risk management in agriculture, so everything from budgeting to commodity marketing to crop insurance. And so we're going to spend just a couple minutes at the beginning here talking through some of the core educational program offerings that we have, but really our time today is going to be devoted to our latest educational tool, which is called AgriBattle, which is an online marketing simulation that you can use in conjunction with our resources or in conjunction with other resources and content that you use in the classroom. So we'll walk through, again, some of the basic offerings that we have and then take a look at AgriBattle. And then if you don't have an educational account with us, I'll give you some information on how to get that set up. And then I also may follow up if I'm able to get everyone's emails here at the end as well to make sure that if you don't have an account, we can follow up and get you one set up before the end of the week. So again, our curriculum modules cover a range of topics, and it's built out to cover anywhere from a whole semester to a year based off how you're breaking up the curriculum and how in depth you're going with each objective and piece. But we really break it down into 4 categories. So our first 2 modules are just introductory into what is risk management and what type of conversations and decisions do farmers have to consider when they're considering developing a risk management plan. We then take a look at budgeting, so everything from per unit and gross expenses to taking a look at profit goals and how to set and determine what a producer's break-even price is. And then we also have 2 units that look at balance sheet and cash flow statements. And then the big chunk here, this like middle blue part, really is looking at commodities marketing. And so we have a range of modules, and a lot of our teachers like to walk through modules 1 through 20 in congruent order, but it's really up to you how you use our resources. Once you have an account, you'll have access to everything, so you can fit it into your classroom schedule as needed. But this middle section looks at influences on commodity prices when it comes to supply and demand, an introduction to what is commodities marketing and what is terminology that's important to understand. And then we take a look at 4 basic cash contracts used in the cash market by agricultural sellers. And then we also look at futures contracts and options contracts and the hedging process. Our final 2 modules, our last chunk, looks at crop insurance and government payments. Those 2 modules really can be done at any time. They're just our latest ones, so they're added there at the end. We update our curriculum every year, and so if you have an account, you'll see that all of our curriculum has been updated this summer and is ready to use this upcoming academic year. And as we go, if you have any questions, feel free. I have the Zoom chat up, so feel free to send those in, and I'll make sure to cover those so that you don't forget them at the end. But access to our curriculum modules is through a Google Drive link, and you'll have access to all of the supplement resources, some explanations and how-to documents that might be helpful for you throughout the year that you're using this curriculum. This link is accessed through our GrainBridge application, which is an additional piece that we add into our curriculum. So as students are walking through and learning about the expenses of a corn production or a live cattle operation, the marketing strategies and actually learning how to implement those marketing strategies. They also have a free account to our GrainBridge risk management platform where they're entering this information. And so you'll access this Google Drive through that account when I set that up, and you can use both together, or if you just want to use sections of the application and all of the curriculum, I'm always happy to walk through different strategies that work best for your classroom, especially as we look ahead to this next academic year, whether you're going to be virtual or in a hybrid situation. I'm happy to, at a later time, talk about some strategies that we've discovered over the last few months to use our resources in that way. So a quick overview of our curriculum outline. We provide you an overview of the module and the objectives of that particular module. Our curriculum is referenced to national AFNR standards, so those will be at the front page of each module packet. And then we'll have our content and instruction, which is delivered in 2 ways. So you have access to both a PDF and a PowerPoint, whatever is best for your classroom. The PowerPoints are easy to then pull into Google Classroom and utilize in that format as well. And then the final piece is the learning sequence, which is our application to what students are learning in the classroom. This is where they would then go into the GrainBridge risk management platform and begin to enter information that they've just learned. We provide a pretty detailed step-by-step of this process for students and for you to be able to follow. And we also provide sample numbers. You, of course, can have students do their own research and determine their own types of expense prices based off your local area versus what we use as the national average, or you can stick with the numbers that we provide in those learning sequences as well. And then we provide some supplement resources, review and enrichment documents that can be used as guided notes during the content overview with students, as homework, or follow-up assignments the next day as well. Anything that we provide like that, we also always provide answer keys, and those can all be found in the Google Drive folder in each individual module's folder. And then we also provide assessments that are either for each module or for a handful of modules combined. Again, we'll provide answer keys to all of those. All those documents are provided in a Word document, so we give you free range to download those, and if you want to make edits, you absolutely can. We believe that you all are the experts in your own classroom, so if you want to change up the way a question is asked, or if you would like to add additional questions or take away some things because maybe you don't go in depth in one particular objective, we certainly give you the ability to do so. And the last thing to cover before we kind of transition to talk about our AgriBattle tool are some strategies for the classroom. So we have a couple outlined items that you can certainly use in your classroom to help you get acquainted with using the GrainBridge curriculum and application. We have a 10-week and a 14-week outline broken down that's accessed in the Google folder. And this just gives you a good look at if you have an entire semester and you have 5 days a week, a 50-minute class period, we estimate that it'll take about 10 weeks to get through the curriculum. If you only have 3 days a week to dedicate, it would take about 14 weeks, again, for a 50-minute class period, 3 days a week, every week. So, of course, if this isn't attainable for you, this is a great place to look and see, okay, maybe you only have 8 weeks total. How much could you realistically get through? Or if you know for sure you want to get through modules 1 through 8, you want to do all of the risk management introduction and the budgeting pieces, then you can look at these outlines to get a good estimate of how long that could take you in the classroom. We also provide what we call the semester project, and this is really built for independent study or kind of more autonomy for your students and their own experience with the risk management platform. And so we provide activities each week that they have to accomplish. So, you know, for example, week 1 is they're taking a look at local crop and livestock that are grown in their state, so in South Dakota, or maybe in your particular county. And then they're selecting those and creating a production profile in GrainBridge, all while also working through the curriculum content that relates. And so that is also a project outline that we've built that's available to you. Of course, I'm happy to answer any questions about those at the end as well. We also have what we call the Farmer Frank 3-week mock operation. And so this is taking a much higher level look at commodities marketing. And so this is typically used by our teachers in 2 ways. Either one, as a assessment at the end of walking through particular modules. So we spent 8 to 10 weeks on budgeting and some marketing pieces. So now we want to have 2.5 to 3 weeks with the Farmer Frank activity at a much more accelerated rate, working through budgeting and then marketing Farmer Frank's commodities. Or some teachers will use this and extend it over 5 or 6 weeks and actually learn the content as we're also working through Farmer Frank's particular scenarios where we're discovering his break-even price, we're determining how we would like to market his commodities and what time frame and so forth. So that's another project that's available in the curriculum Google Drive. Our GrainBridge risk management platform itself, so the online application that is a producer-facing application, can be used in a couple additional ways for your classroom. And since we give you free access, we're absolutely happy for you to use it to manage a school farm if you have a production like that with your program. Or for students, if you create student accounts in there, they are absolutely able to use this to supplement any production-based SAE programs, so to manage expenses if they're making any marketing decisions, and use this in conjunction with their AET experience as well. The last thing I want to mention is the distance and virtual learning. So as plans are either made or being made for your classroom and your program in this upcoming semester, do know that our resources are tailored well to fit your virtual or distance learning needs. Again, our PowerPoints and items can be easily translated into Google Classroom for you. All of our pieces are downloadable and easy to print and send to students in whatever format that looks like for you. And our risk management platform is accessible anywhere a student has a Wi-Fi signal. You don't have to use the risk management platform. That's a question I got quite a bit in the spring semester. So if you're unable to provide a virtual experience for students, you can certainly just use the curriculum content and not do the learning sequence on the end of each piece as well. That's pretty easy to still maintain and have the experience with the content as well. And then we also have supplement activities that are listed at the end of each enrichment worksheet. And so if you're tasked with having students have continuing education on particular items. So if we're just covering modules 1 through 6, but we need that to extend over a longer time versus the couple weeks that we estimate it, you can use some of those supplement projects that are great for students in a virtual or a distance learning environment as well. A lot of it includes them creating different reports or stories or presentations or posters about particular content in that particular module. So those are available as well. Great. I have 11:15, so we're going to start through on the AgriBattle conversation as well. I've got to be cognizant of time because I have an AgriBattle game starting for us at 11:30 to take a look at. So we're going to walk through some of the basics of this particular tool as well and how it relates to our curriculum modules. So obviously a big chunk of our educational resources are around commodity marketing and taking a look at how we use certain types of cash contracts, how we use the futures market, and how we can, as an agricultural producer, hedge or price protect when prices are favorable for us as an agricultural seller. Our goal with AgriBattle is for it to be an additional educational tool that you can use in conjunction, again, with our content or other content you have in the classroom for students to have a more engaging way to test their understanding and their knowledge and their skill set when it comes to marketing commodities and making those marketing decisions, as well as recognizing and understanding factors of supply and demand and how those influence the change of commodity prices over a simulated period of time. And it's also a competition-based challenge. So students will be able to see where they're ranking in their current AgriBattle game or experience over the time frame versus the fellow students as well, as far as the revenue that they're generating. That's what we utilize to determine the ranking. So our learning objectives with this, I've already kind of said these, with our particular tool is really for students, for players in the game to have a strong understanding of supply and demand, how that impacts the movement of commodity prices, understanding cash grain marketing contracts. So AgriBattle is just used for corn currently as the only commodity that we're working with selling and trading, and understanding the advantages that are associated with our grain contracts that are available in the system, and also understanding the value of trading futures contracts and using options contracts and hedging with both futures and options as we do so as well. So again, AgriBattle's function really is to be a game of skill for students to have a stronger understanding and confidence in their own ability when making marketing decisions as they see prices change, as they see news around what supply and demand expectations look like fluctuate as well. There are two roles or functions as well in the game, which are a player and an admin. Our player is going to be our students who are participating in these active AgriBattle games. They're making marketing decisions, and they can anyone can create a player account, and they join a game that you've created using a unique game code that'll be generated when you create that game. And I'm going to show us all that process once we jump over into the AgriBattle system. The admin, that's you as the educator for your course, and you'll be the one that creates the games and then can have an overall view of your players' individual performance as well as a summary of what actions have been taken during the game. You too can switch to player and join active games. And right now we will only be granting any classroom educators admin access, and I'll show you how to request admin access in the system. Again, that's at no cost to you. And we have no limit at this time of how many games you can create or how many players can join your active games. Again, we'll walk through here in a moment what that looks like to get a game created, to get players joined into that game. Some of the actions that an AgriBattle player can take is they can sell 3 types of cash contracts: a forward cash contract, a hedge to arrive contract, and a basis contract. Again, we have curriculum modules that cover these 3 types of contracts and introduction to commodities marketing. So that's why we suggest this being used as a game of skill and an assessment type of tool used in conjunction or as kind of a post-test after working through these curriculum modules. Players can also trade futures and trade options contracts. They can complete transactions at any point that the game becomes active, and we set an active game time. Our game becomes active at 11:30 today, and I'll show us how we do that here in a little bit. And then we can simulate the hedging process, which means I'm taking a position in the futures market now for what I'll eventually do in the cash market. So as a commodity seller, I can sell futures contracts because eventually I'm going to sell my commodity. And so we can simulate that experience and how to price protect with the AgriBattle system as well. Players can view their profit and loss and their revenue as prices change. We market against those current prices with any open contracts or any unsold production. And we can see that against with their break-even price. So at any point they can see, are they currently experiencing a loss or a profit, and by what percentage is that profit or loss versus their break-even. And then I mentioned they can view the game leaderboard. So all the top 5 players are always viewable to all players, as well as one's individual ranking. So if I'm second place, I can see that in the leaderboard. If I'm 13th place, I can't see myself in the leaderboard, but I can see my ranking of 13th. And as an admin, you can see all of your players' rankings at any time. So your main functions as a game admin are to be able to create customized game that fit your class structure, that fit a certain time frame, and that also fit where your students' understanding currently is. So based off what you've already covered, based off what you plan to cover maybe, you can certainly tailor this to fit where your students' comfort level is. You can simulate several different things with potential scenarios, historical production years, and you can also use our template games where we've already done that for you and created historical production years or scenarios that already exist in your account. I'll show you that here shortly, but we currently have 8 template games that exist in the system that you can simply click on, adjust any of the time settings, and then it's available to you and your students to use. It's a lot more time saving for you in that way. Again, you can determine that game length and the certain times that you want to utilize for when these simulated date ranges will change in the game and where new prices or new events will take place. You can view at any point what the performance of your players are doing, or the overall game report, which shows us what actions have been made during each price event on an overall base. And again, there's no limit currently on the amount of games or the number of players who can join your game. So if you have 3 students in your class, great. If you have 23 students in your class, great. If you have 53 students that are playing in your program, that's great as well. There's no limit currently of who can be in the game at a time. So let's go ahead and jump over to AgriBattle. We have 10 minutes before that game kicks off, but I'll show us a little bit of the system and how things work before we start to see a simulated look at the game. AgriBattle is accessed at agribattle.com. Again, anyone can create a player account right now. It doesn't go through an approval process by us using the sign up button on the top right corner. So you're welcome to do that, and you're welcome to join today's game, or I'm sharing my screen so you can watch as we play through throughout as well. So I'm actually going to copy this game code, maybe. I'll copy it once I close out of the presentation view. But after we take a look at the game, we'll also make sure to look at the admin features as well. We're going to start off by taking a look at the player features. So I'm going to switch over to an AgriBattle game and drop in that game code to you all. So if you are interested in joining the game right now, feel free, but also I've got my screen shared so you can certainly just watch along just for the quick simulated experience. So I just dropped in that game code. So again, I'm gonna start from the login. Sign up here at agribattle.com allows you to sign up and create a player account. This is where you and your students would begin to first have that player account. Once you have a player account, you're then able to access or request admin access. And again, we'll approve educators, so it'll take, if you request, we should have it approved within 2 or 3 days, because I'll confirm that you're an educator at a certain program before confirming your admin access. But to request admin access when you first log in, instead of having this option to switch to player, because I'm in admin view, or switch to admin, instead it will say host a game. You'll click that and fill out the requirements in order to host that game, again at no cost to you. So when I first log in as a player view, I can see a couple different things: my active games, any upcoming games, and any closed games that I've experienced. My active games are games that I can currently enter and either make production or make transactions because they're currently live, like our current game right here that goes live in a couple minutes. Or that games that have previously lasted, but I can still click in. So this is a sample game that's over, but it's still active for me to be able to look at particular marketing decisions that I made and where prices were. I didn't make any decisions in this particular game as I was just hosting it. And upcoming games are games that have not quite yet started. So this one starts tomorrow, this one starts Thursday. So those aren't yet able for me to click in as a player. So when I first select as a player into this game, because we haven't hit that 11:30 mark Central Time yet, I'm not able to make transactions quite yet, but I can see a couple different things to get started. The first is I can see the first market news. Market news are created to determine where prices may go next. And so they're released halfway in between each price event. So for example, if I have it set at every 10 minutes, a price event happens. Then at 11, a price event happens. 11:10, a price event happens. At 11:05, a market news will release, which will tell me some fluctuations of where the price at 11:10 may go. Again, based off factors of supply and demand and how those influence commodity prices. I'm also able to see my current performance, which of course the game hasn't started. And so once the game starts, I'll get to see a more realistic look at where my profit or loss is. But this allows me to see my break even from the start for my overall production per acre or per bushel, and be able to keep track of that as well. Once the game starts, I'll have a button that says add sales or add trades, and I'm able to begin making transactions. As we do that, my cash sale bar here will begin to fill and show me what type of transactions I've made in the cash market on what type of contract. My trades will also begin to generate to tell me what type of open or closed positions I currently have and what the value of either my open position is or what the value of the position of my closed positions is and the total profit or loss I gained on that particular transaction. I'll be able to see those updated as each price event moves over time. And I can see here when my next price event releases and when my next market news releases. We do suggest for games that you have them fall at least 10 minutes apart. For today's game, I have it very accelerated just so that we can have a quicker look at how things operate as we move through. But by placing price events every 10 minutes, that then puts market news between every 5 minutes. That gives your students a little bit more time to make their marketing decisions, to reflect and reference what may be taking place based off what they're reading in market news. And it also gives the system a little bit more time to quickly kick over those prices. We find when we have a shorter time frame, sometimes it's a 30-second, 45-second delay. So if we have it within 10 minutes, it kicks off right at 11:30, 11:40. But for today's game, I have it accelerated simply so that we're not waiting 10 minutes for it to update. Great. So because we still have 5 minutes, I've gone a lot quicker than I thought I would. I'll show us some of the admin functionality before the game gets started. I do think I forgot to mention, when you first get in as a player, you see this game code down at the bottom. That's where we would enter our game code that is generated by our game admin, and that's how we join each individual game. So you can see here today's game code for our South Dakota AgriBattle game. That's the game code I entered to join that unique specific game. So that's where it's added in. Make sure as students do that there's no spaces at the front or the end, or it won't accept that game code, and they may not be able to tell that's why that's what's happening. So just have students be cognizant of that. We can get to our dashboard in a couple different ways when we're on a game. So you saw me jump from our South Dakota game up here to go to dashboard, or if I have several active games, I can jump into them straight from here as well. So switching over to admin, on our admin dashboard, we have several similar views as our player dashboard as well. So I can see any active games that I've created that are currently active. So that is just today's game. I have upcoming games that I as an admin have created, so a game tomorrow and a game the next day. And then I have template games. I had mentioned that these are games that we have added into AgriBattle that you can access at any time. When you access these, they act like a draft game. And I don't currently have any draft games, but if you have a draft game, you'll also have a draft game bar that are games that you haven't created to be active, but you're not finished with, so you've saved them to go back and edit. Template games act in a very similar way. I've added these into the system, and so any admin has access to them. So we'll just select this one really quick. And when I select it, it brings me up to the game details. You can keep all details the same, except obviously you would want to edit the start date and the start time to your own classroom needs. Here I have this game lasting 5 days with one price event each day. You can switch that and make it 1 day with 5 price events that day. Or you can edit it in any other way as well. And so once that's saved, maybe I want to update the name to test game, update the date. The date is always going to be the day that I've added it. So of course you're going to update it to a more active day. We'll continue. Our production and contract information provides player information to your students. All students will have the same level of production. They'll have the same break-even price as they play. And so that's determined by you putting in what the acreage, the yield, and the cost per production is. So because of this, it tells me that I have 190,000 bushels to market with a break-even price of $3.42 per bushel. As I edit this, those will update in accordance to give me a more accurate look. Again, this is going to be viewable by all players in your game. You can't separate currently player by player. And then contract fees, again, come preloaded. You can edit those if you'd like, but we suggest keeping what we have preloaded. But based on your own knowledge, you certainly can update those as you feel comfortable. And then the third part is market simulation. And so this is the information that your players are actually going to see as they move throughout the game. So here I said today's game. I would need to update the time because I have it at 8 a.m. So let's just say, I'm gonna say at, 6 p.m. And then I'd update all those as well. And this is gonna give me a look at what is the pre-added market news, what are the prices that have been entered for the futures, the basis level, and then our final cash price for each of our individual items. You can edit these, but again, it's also preloaded, so you can just look at them, see what you feel, and keep them as is if you'd like. The times that these are releases are going to be shared here. So we'll see that market news is always going to be released at 12 a.m. of the game start day. So that's why we can currently view our market news for our active game today. Whatever that start day is, whether it's I'm creating it for the day of, like today's game, or I'm creating it for the following day, like some of my upcoming games that I have at 12 a.m., it's always going to be active. So for today's game, when I created it this morning, it automatically became viewable for that market news because it was after midnight of the day it was created. And then each of our market news and our prices will be outlined here. This is a little wonky because I haven't updated these prices, so you'll have to make sure to update the accurate release time and AM or PM, and that's again going to determine when the price releases, and then the market news will place itself in a simulated halfway in between time frame. The simulated period is determined by taking what our game duration is. So how many price events do we have and how many days? Here I have 1 day, 5 price events. So AgriBattle has taken the growing season that was selected of May 31 through October 31 and broken that down into 5 categories or sections of time frames. And so that's always going to be pre-simulated for you by the AgriBattle system. And it gives you a look here at the bottom as you're entering information of where those prices are going as far as the trend for our futures and our cash price over time, so you can have a more accurate look at that. When I save and create this game, I then generate the game code that I can copy and send to students for them to add into their own player account and then join that particular game. But let's jump over to our player game before we look at more admin features, because that game has kicked off and started. So we can see here that it has hit 11:31, so 1 minute passed. So my add sale and my add trade button has become viewable, and my current price event has become viewable. So I can now see that for my simulated time of March 31 through May 11th, my futures basis and cash level is at the level it currently exists. My market news is still what it was, but my next market news will be released here in a couple minutes at 11:33-ish. I can see here again that change in my production and the value, because AgriBattle takes any of our unsold production, which is currently all of our production, and values it at the current price. And so it's valuing it at $3.55, which is 13 cents above our break-even price. We'll see that fluctuate as we add more transactions in. And again, as we have any open contracts, it'll take the open price and mark it against that to see the current value. But let's take a look at adding some sample sales and trades that you and your students would be able to do as they're working throughout the game. So to add a sale, sorry, I jumped ahead of myself there. We're going to select that green Add Sale button. And we really only have to complete 2 items. First, we need to determine the type of contract we're going to sell on. Again, this is why it's really valuable for your students to have already worked through some sort of content, whether that's ours or other content, to understand these types of contracts, their advantages and their risks that are associated, and why an agricultural seller would use each during specific timeframes or at specific prices. So here I might say I'm going to select a hedge to arrive contract. That means I'm locking in the current futures price for my contract, but I'm leaving my basis level open. So I'll have to set that at some point before the end of the game, or the final basis level will be applied to my open contract. I then have to determine what the bushel amount that I'm going to sell on that contract is. So I just entered 10,000 for simplicity purposes right now. Everything else is automated. Our delivery time frame is always automated to be October 1 to 31, so harvest time. Right now we don't have that entered as something that you can edit. Down the road we hope to be able to edit that when it comes to using trades and using other contract month for futures and options as well. But right now we're just using the October 1 through 31 time frame. So I would add that sale, confirm, and then it would take me to my sale page that shows me any entered sales that I've had. So currently just that hedge to arrive contract. I can return to my main dashboard here and see that that hedge to arrive contract still needs to set my basis. So we're always going to tell players if they have any unpriced contracts. So for a hedge to arrive or a basis contract, if they haven't set the futures or the basis level, they're going to be told need to set basis. For a basis contract, they'll be told need to set futures. And then they can set that at any point. I'm going to wait till the price changes to show us how that would work if we were to set the basis level on this particular contract. Of course, if I'm adding a cash sale, and here it's labeled cash, but it's really operating as a forward cash sale because we're looking at delivery in October 1 through 31. So let's just do 10,000 bushels again. I wouldn't have any follow-up actions that I would need to set on that particular contract. So I can see I have that contract set at 355. That's a finalized contract. Great, so it is 11:35. We have another price release in 1 minute. So let's go ahead and take a look at the trade section. But before I we can also see this pie graph that again shows us what types of contracts that we've initiated and what our unsold percentage or look is. So right now I'm 89, just about 90% unsold, but I can see I have about 5% sold on each of these types of contracts. So that's a good visual for your students to be able to keep track as well of what actions they're making in the cash market. So to add a trade, we're going to select the Add Trade button, and we have just a couple items that we need to make a decision on when we're doing this. Again, when we're adding a trade, we are using the futures market and either futures or options contracts as a route to hedge or to price protect now for what we'll eventually do in the cash market. And so as a AgriBattle player, we're living in the world of an agricultural seller, as a corn producer and seller. And so we can act as a hedger in the futures market, but we do also have the ability to act as a speculator, which means we're using the futures market as a way to make a profit. So for example, if I'm a hedger and I grow corn, eventually I'm going to sell that corn in the cash market. So I'm going to sell a futures contract now to establish that selling price and then eventually sell that commodity in the cash market as well. However, we can also buy a futures contract, which would be me speculating because I don't actually have to buy corn in the cash market and simply using the market because of my knowledge and understanding of its movements to make a profit. So I say all that so that we know that we can do that in AgriBattle to a certain extent. You also can certainly provide information to your students about only using the routes of a hedger and not allowing them to make those types of transactions that would be more speculative. We don't have a way to turn that off right now, but you can certainly provide that instruction. So we had a price update while I was chatting for a new price range of May 12th to June 22nd and the new futures price of 388, which went up for me, so that's great. So to add a sale, again, I'm going to go in here and let's say I'm going to sell futures. Futures contracts are standardized. One corn contract is 5,000 bushels. We'll always be able to see the total down here below. And so I'm going to tell it I'm going to sell 10 futures contracts, which results in 50,000 bushels. I can see, again, my contract month is referenced to December because that's the nearest contract month to my October delivery range at a $3.88. I do have a $50 brokerage fee per contract, and we'll see that as we move forward reflected in our total value of this contract. The trade date is simply the day, the first date of this simulated date range. So it's May 12th to June 22nd, so just using May 12th. That's where that date comes from. So I'm going to add that tray, confirm that my position is sell. My contract quantity is 10, which is 50,000 bushels, and the futures price I'm choosing to sell at is $3.88. Confirm that trade. And then it's going to bring me to my view trades dashboard or form. And so I can see any trades that I've transacted here. Of course, this is the only one that I have transacted, and see the current value of that particular trade. In AgriBattle, we have the opportunity to offset these trades, which means in the futures market, if I've sold my futures contracts, in order to prevent myself from having to actually make delivery on that contract to the unknown buyer in the futures market, I would offset my trade by taking the opposite position, or in this example, I would buy 10 futures contracts back at the new market price. A gain or a loss is determined by taking our sell price minus our buy price. So my goal would be that I've sold this at a higher price than what eventually I'll buy it back at. So I likely sold this because I believe the price is going to drop. I want to protect that $3.88, and I'll buy it back in order to receive some sort of gain in the futures market. And so that's what it means when I select offset this trade. Again, we'll let the price move, and so that we can then see a different price in the value. I have a $500 loss on that contract because of my $50 contract fee per contract. So we'll always see that reflected as well. Let's take a look at options as well before we kind of move forward and see how we complete transactions, and then jump over for any questions. So we also have the opportunity, as we're making these decisions up here, of using options contracts, a call or a put option. Again, this is why it's valuable for students to have content understanding as they jump into the system, to know what each of those means and why we would use each. So as an agriculture producer who's hedging, I would likely buy a put option, which gives me the right, but I'm not locked in as an obligation to then sell the underlying futures contract. So here, the underlying futures contract, the futures price was $3.88. So it adjusts to the closest strike price, or the price I'm choosing to protect, of $3.90. Of course, for that right, I have to pay a premium to have the right to not be locked in to that particular decision. And so my premium cost is 17 cents per bushel to protect this particular strike price. So let's just say I'm going to do 2 contracts, which is 10,000 bushels. Again, I'll have a brokerage fee attached to this particular transaction. And I can see I chose to buy a put, 2 contracts, which is 10,000 bushels, protect the strike price of $3.90 at a put premium of about 17 cents per bushel. Confirm that trade, and again, I'll be able to now see that bought put, that I'm in an open position. I can also offset this particular option. So in the real world, we have 3 ways to exit an option transaction. Offset it, so take the opposite position. Exercise it, so actually take action on that underlying strike price and sell a futures contract, or allow it to expire worthless as we get to its expiration time frame. In AgriBattle, we have the opportunity to either offset or to allow it to expire. Exercising options actually are rarely used, so are not frequently used in the futures market. So we can either offset just like we can with our futures, or we can allow it to expire at the end of the game. And again, if there are any questions, feel free to start sending those in. But let's take a look at offsetting, or completing, I should say, some of our cash contracts. So we know that we established a hedge to arrive contract earlier. I can go in and I can view that. We set it at $3.80. And I'm going to decide, let's go ahead and set this 30 under basis. Maybe I don't think it's going to get any better. It's just going to start getting more negative. So I want to establish that on that contract. So I can then see it's 10,000 bushels. That was the original quantity that I transacted. My final cash price and how that's determined with my 380, subtracting my basis level and my fee per bushel to get me $3.46 as my final cash price, and the total value of this transaction, just like we can see with our completed cash contract above. And I can now see that final transaction of that particular contract. I can jump over and see that that is now priced, so I don't have any to price on that particular contract. We did have a price update, and prices unfortunately went up, so I now am experiencing a loss in these 2 transactions because, again, we take our sell minus our buy price. So AgriBattle is telling me that the current value of these contracts are at a loss because the current board price is $4 and I predicted $3.80. So I would experience a 13-cent loss if I were to offset that right now. But for our sake to see how that operates, I'm going to go ahead and still offset it. So I would select offset when I'm comfortable with that level. Either I believe I'm going to have a larger loss, so I want to cut my losses now, or I believe that this is a profitable gain for myself. I'm going to confirm that offset. I can see my total gain or loss in that particular contract. Confirm. And I can see that reflected now here on my particular trades. And then when I scroll down, I can see that that's closed. So that means there's no further actions that need to be made on that particular transaction. But this is still an open position with my bought puts. Great. I'm going to pause there and see what questions that we have. I believe, I guess one more thing for me to cover is our leaderboard. So if we have more than one player in here, of course, we'll be able to see our leaderboard here. We can see our production and break-even information reflected once again. We can also obviously see that in our dashboard. And I can see my current profit, loss, and percent sold for all 5 top players in this particular area. Or if I'm again like 8th, I'll see that I'm ranked 8th here. I can still select it and see the other top 5 players and where they're at. So I can kind of reflect and see how close I am to those leaderboards as well.
We have about 5 minutes left.
Oh, yep, that's right. So let's jump back over. Thank you. I was thinking we were done at noon, but you're right, 11:50. Thanks for that. So let's jump back over to the PowerPoint for just a couple final things. And then if you have any questions, you should have my contact information in the registration items, so feel free to reach out, or I took a screen grab of everyone that's in the meeting, so I'm going to aim to locate emails and reach out as well. So a couple of the ready-made resources that we have for you all for AgriBattle. Of course, the template games are all in your dashboard. We also have those in PDF format with some additional information that may be useful for you. We have obviously all of the curriculum that goes along with GrainBridge curriculum that support the AgriBattle use. And we have some worksheets and assessments and some how-to documents that help as well. All AgriBattle resource items are in the GrainBridge curriculum drive. I didn't update that, but they are viewable at this point in your GrainBridge curriculum drive. So if you have an account, you can see those. If you don't have an account, once we create you an account, you'll be able to see those as well. A couple suggested items for use in the classroom. I've talked about these a little bit here and there, but using them as a summative assessment is a really great way and something that a lot of our educators have identified as the way that they'll use our resources for their classroom. And we also would suggest maybe using this after completing the majority of our GrainBridge curriculum at the end of the semester. You can also use this in other ways as you've seen. And again, the game duration is really up to you. If you need it to be one day during your 50-minute class period, you can certainly make that work. If you need it to be once a day for a 5-day week, you can make that work as well. If you needed it to be 2 weeks with one price event a day, that's attainable as well. Do know that the AgriBattle system can't skip weekends. So if you do set it over that time frame, it still will run a price event each day over the weekend. But all of those are usable and attainable. The last thing to cover with you all is that Thursday we'll be hosting a teacher-only AgriBattle game. So it'll be at 2 o'clock Central Time, and we'll run it for an hour, so 2 to 3 o'clock. We'll do a webinar right beforehand, but we'll cover a lot of the things that we just covered today. And our top 5 revenue generators will receive a gift card, and everyone who participates will get a fun AgriBattle swag item in the mail and some printed support documents as well. So we'd love to see you join that if you're able to with your own schedule. But of course, if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to send my email into the chat right now. I know that Michelle just sent in the doc to our resources that has my email as well, but feel free to reach out with any questions. Again, I got a screen grab of the folks that are in here, so I'm going to try to locate some emails and send some follow-up information as well. But with that, I know we have 2 minutes, so if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions or final thoughts before you all move on to your next items.